Hello everyone, and also I just want to say special hello to my mom. She's watching every video that I've made, even though she really don't understand what I'm talking about. But anyways, this one is for beginners, so mom, pay attention, you might actually learn something. In this video, I should take you from complete zero, so from totally non-knowledge at all, to HTML5 knowledge, so that you should be able to actually create HTML5 files and maybe make some very simple website. So yeah, let's get into it. So before we start, I just want to say that this course is for complete beginners. Okay, so pretty much no person who has no experience with web development or with website creation is the great match for this course. Also, I want you to have a willingness to learn. Obviously, you are watching an hour or so long tutorial, so you probably have that. And also, you should probably be realistic. You will suck from the beginning, at least. It's like everything else in your life. If you go to gym, you don't start lifting the heaviest weight there is, right? You start with those kind of light dumbbells and then you move on, right? So even though I can promise you that you will not create the next YouTube in 1 hour, but I can promise you that this might be a stepping stone, the start on your journey to web development, okay? Also, I just want to say that in this course, I will discuss no CSS. So CSS is basically something that's used together with HTML5 in order to create great looking websites. The CSS is kind of the how it looks, the part of the web, and the HTML5 is more like describing what it is. I will get into it more into details in the next couple of hours. Okay, so what will you learn? You will learn basically what is HTML, how to create a web page, okay, and some sort of HTML5 tags and stuff like that. So you will learn basically the main goal of this video is to learn how to create a very simple web page using the HTML markup language. So let me actually start out by saying what is the HTML5. So the HTML5 is actually a hypertext markup language. What that means? Well, yeah, it's a markup language. You can imagine it this way. You are telling the computer what is on your website. So you are telling him, hey, this is a paragraph, hey, this is a heading, hey, this is a image, and stuff like that. Okay, so that's basically what HTML does. It's not a programming language, so you don't need any logical skills or anything like that. You just need your very simple common sense and just willingness to learn, I guess. You really don't need any math or anything like that to start with HTML. Because as I said before, it's just describing the web page, okay? You are just describing what the user should see or what the browser should see. So really, it's very simple. You don't necessarily have to be worried about some sort of logic or anything like that. So what do you need in order to get started? Well, obviously you will need some browser, but since you are watching this video, I assume that you probably have some browser, right? I would highly recommend using Google Chrome. Even as a Microsoft employee, I would highly recommend you use Google Chrome. You might use Internet Explorer, I don't know, yeah, it's up to you, it's a good choice also, but yeah, even I do use Google Chrome. And also, but there is another product from Microsoft called Visual Studio Code, which we will use, and this is a great tool. It's a great tool that you definitely want to use in order to start developing some web applications. So with all of that being done, you can just go to code.visualstudio.com and it should take you to a page that looks similar like this one. And inside here, you can just simply download it for your operating system. It supports everything. So it's very easy to install. I will just leave that up to you. I think that you are able to do this on your own. So feel free to pause the video and install the Visual Studio Code into your computer. Once you have done this, let's go. Let's continue. So what is an HTML file? So overall, let me start out by saying what is the page in the internet. When you type google.com into browser, what it actually shows you. Well, it's just a document. You can think of it as a Word document, right? Whatever. It's just a document in the network, in the internet. And HTML file is just a file that ends with .html, and it describes a website, right? It's a special kind of format for the website, okay? You can think of it this way. And usually you got, for example, index.html site, and this HTML file is usually a root file that, for example, if you type abc.com, the index.html site will actually show, right? It will show into your browser and I don't know, yeah, it will be displayed. And for example, but you can have multiple of these sites, right? You can have multiple HTML files. For example, another one can say about.html. And if you type abc.com/about.html, this file will be shown, okay? So this is just a very basics of what is HTML file and what is page in the internet. So HTML file is actually a page in the internet. It's as simple as that. So let me actually start out by explaining the HTML tag syntax. So you usually type a tag describing some sort of element, okay? So on your page, what do you think is a element? Right? If you look at, I don't know, what any blog or anything like that, what is a element on the page? Well, element can be pretty much anything, right? You can think of it like heading, paragraph, image, I don't know, link in the navigation, whatever, right? This is basically a element, and this element is described by some sort of tag. So the tag starts with angle break, right? It have a angle brackets and the name of the tag, and then it also needs to be closed, right, with this slash. So this is a closing tag, and in between those two tags there is the actual element. So for example, if you have a heading, right, you define the tag as a this way. This is basically telling the browser, hey, this is a heading. Then you have the content of the heading, so this will be actually displayed. And then you have the closing tag, basically telling the computer, hey, this is the closing of the heading, and next we will have some other element. And sometimes you don't necessarily have this closing element. This is used most of the time, right? This syntax when you have kind of pair tags, right? So you have opening tag and closing tag, and in between you have the content. But sometimes it kind of doesn't make sense. For example, if you have a image, you just want to have a opening tag, and inside of the opening tag you just want to define the source to your image file. So you don't have any closing tag for this sort of thing, but don't worry about it. I will show you exactly in the code how to do this. Alright, so let's get our hands dirty. I've prepared a simple folder where I have just one image, and we will create our website from complete scratch. So I've got open the Visual Studio Code. You should be able to see something of this sort, and I will just open up this folder, okay, in here. So I will just go to File, Open Folder, click on that, and right now I will just open the folder. So I will just go to the path that I just want to take, and inside here I have the folder. So I can just click on the Select Folder, and I should have opened up the folder. Okay, there you have the image actually. So this is a file explorer. Let me just go quickly through the Visual Studio Code. So you have the file explorer, and inside here you can create new folders, new files, up to you. So you can basically work with this as a directory. It's pretty cool. And then inside here you have usually your file content. So let me actually start out by actually creating a new file. You can see this sort of icon right here. If you click on that, it will create a new file, and you can name it however you want. I, for example, can name it index.html, okay? And if I hit enter, I have a new index.html file, and as you can see in here, it opened up the text editor, okay? You can just get rid of this, and you have the text editor right here. And also you can notice that in the folder, there is actually the index.html file right here. And you can actually open it up with your browser. So if you go to Open With and Google Chrome, there it is. It's your index.html file opened up in your browser. And right now, if you, for example, type something or whatever and save the file, I usually use Control and S, right? In here you can see a dot. There was a dot. If I, for example, type something, I made some changes. There is a dot, and if I hit Control Save, you can see that it is saved, okay? So I very often do this. You need to save the file before you reload the page. Right now, when I reload the page, as you can see, there is the text that I just created. And you have basically created your first web page. Yeah, it's as simple as that. But this is really not a web page. So this is just the document in the internet, right? So let me actually start out by just removing this thing. So I can collapse the Explorer menu, right? I can open and collapse. And let me start out with what every HTML file starts with. And that's the HTML tag. So HTML, and I have a extension installed that automatically fills this closing tag. Okay, so that's very cool. I spent a lot of time typing this, and usually you just want to use some sort of extension of this sort that will autocomplete your tags. So this is a great tool. So you have a opening HTML and closing HTML tag. Okay, then inside of this you have a head. Okay, head. And underneath you have body, like this. So let me actually describe what is going on with this head. So in this head, you have some sort of information about the document. So it's not something that is shown on the page, okay? In here, you are just describing, for example, for the Google search, to what are the keywords on your page, right? You can also describe the title of your page. You can describe some sort of description, so the small text that is being shown in a search, right? When your page is on search, there is a small text, so you can describe all of these things in here. You can also link another files like CSS files, JavaScript files in here. So inside the head, you usually have some sort of metadata, right? Data about the file. So that's what comes here. So let me just start out by showing you the first tag that you usually have in a head, which is the title. And this is just the title that is being shown right here. Okay, so right at the top of the tab. So you can type something like hello world, and it will show, right? If you save this thing and reload the page, there it is. There's like hello world. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? You can change this to whatever you want. So that's just the first tag that we will learn. But for the HTML part, this head really isn't that important, right? The most important thing is actually the body. What is the body? Well, body is everything that you see in here. Okay, so body is the actual page that you actually see. And inside of the body, you can define a lot of elements. So for example, we can start out by defining a heading. So you have H1 as a heading. It's a section heading usually. So for example, you can imagine that when you create a blog, you have the blog title, right? So blog post title, right? And this is usually in H1, so heading 1. So this one is a title. Let me just type in here something and reload the page, and we should see title right here. So this is actually a heading, but usually you don't have just one heading on the page, right? You can use multiple tags, right, of the same sort, right? So you can have multiple H1 headings on one website, and they will be shown in your browser. Right now, I've made a mistake. I forgot to save the file before I reloaded the page. So you will make this mistake very often. So just make sure to go back, save the file, and reload the page again. There it is. So right now, I just want to show you that we have multiple levels of these headings. And you can think of it this way. when you have a page, for example, you have a blog post, and then you have some sort of suggested other blog posts, right? Or for example, on YouTube, you have the suggested videos, right? But what is the most important heading for this page? It's the title of the video that you are currently watching, right? And the other titles of those suggested videos are not as important. And you want to be able to actually describe this to the browser, right? To say, hey, this is very important for my page, and these headings are not as important, okay? And this is actually what I just did, okay? So this is not as important title, and this is very important title. So H1, H2, and you can go all the way to H6 if I'm not mistaken. So you can just change these to H3, H4, H5, H6, and let me actually try out H7. So H6 and H7. Usually the rule of thumb is that even though you have, H7 is not available, okay? You can go only up to H6. But usually the rule of thumb is that you don't want to, if your website needs more than these 3 levels of headings, you should really think about whether it's designed correctly, right? Usually when you need these like heading of level 5 and heading of level 6, you usually make your website too complicated, okay? But let me just reload the page and see what happens. So if I just close this thing, save this thing, sorry, and reload the page, you can see that the title gets smaller every time, right? So this is actually the H1, okay, this is the H2. We can maybe just type it in here, so H2, 3, so on, right? You probably get the idea. If I just change some of these and reload the page, there it is, right? It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And also you can notice that the H7, the last one, is actually shown as a normal text. So that's another thing that I just want to demonstrate, is that even if you create some sort of nonsense tag, the Visual Studio Code will tell you, by making it red, it will tell you, hey, this is not an HTML5 tag. But when you save the page, reload the page, it will still be displayed, okay? It's still there, the text is still there, right? So there's nothing of that sort like an error or something like that, right? It will still be displayed. Cool. Alright, so another one of these main block elements is a paragraph, right? Usually on your website, you need some sort of paragraph, some sort of text. And what do? Well, you just create a new tag with the P as a paragraph and just type this is a paragraph. And you can save this thing and reload it, and you can see that there is a paragraph right here, and you can just put a lot of text inside here. It's just as a paragraph, and once again you can have multiple of these in here, okay? So there you can have one paragraph, and then you can have paragraph 2, whatever, right? You can have multiple paragraphs on one page. Now, having just a plain text is kind of boring, right? Usually when you take a look at websites, you can see that some parts of the text are bold, some are somehow else, some crossed or whatever. So there is a cool stuff that's going on with the text, and you can actually do that in the HTML. So what you can do is define a tag inside of another one, and you can just put, for example, a B tag in here, and let me just put the paragraph inside of the B tag, and let's reload the page. As you can see, this text got bolder, right? You can see that this text that's inside of this B got bold, and the other text is still normal, okay? So the B tag actually says to the browser, hey, this is a B, a bold element, right? Make it bold. And another tag that does the similar thing is a strong. And if I put this thing into the strong tag, so strong, opening, closing, and let's just reload the page, and there it is. It looks exactly the same. But the meaning of the strong is actually you are telling the browser that this is very important for the website. So for example, if you have a blog, you could put something like the category or some sort of keywords into the strong tag, just to say to the browser or to the Google that, hey, this is very important for my website, use it as a keyword. He will kind of do the assumption that this is some sort of keyword or something like that. And your page might rank for this kind of word. Cool. So another thing that you can do is make the text italics. So if I, for example, just copy paste this whole thing and make it italic. So instead of B, I will just type I and close the tag. Let's save this thing and reload it. There it is. It's italic, right? You can see that. Another thing that I just want to say is that you can make it bold and italic at the same time. Okay, so if you put in here the bold tag, and then you close it up and save the file, reload the page, you can see that it is bold and italic at the same time, okay? So you can do this however you want. Another thing that you can actually do is just make the text small. So, for example, when you have a blog post, usually you have some sort of title, maybe some image of the author, and then you have some sort of smaller text just saying when the post was published, right? Some sort of date. And you can actually use the small just to make the text smaller, right? You can see that this paragraph 2 is really smaller apart from this thing, right? You can also use the sub tag, so sub, and you can notice that the closing tag is exactly the same as the opening, okay? There's the only difference is with the slash. And if I make it sub, you can see that it's kind of underneath the line, right? You can notice it. I can also make it sub, so P, with the end of P. So if I just put it inside here, you can once again, if you sometimes will make a mistake, and the Visual Studio Code will usually tell you by just making the text red. And usually you just want to look at this thing, and you can also look at the line above and at the end of the line above. And you can see that I just accidentally deleted this closing sign. So if I reload the page, right, if I added it, it got blue again, so it's working again. But if I change this to SUP, like this, and reload the page, you can see that it's upward, right? It's above. So you can use this to write some sort of mathematical stuff into your HTML file. And yeah, so these are just cool things that you can use. You can also use the del, so deleted text. Let's see how that would look like if I save this thing, reload it. As you can see, it's crossed, right? So that's also a thing that you may want to use sometimes. Another thing that you definitely want to do and want to use in your HTML is a comment. You create this tag, okay? So this is a comment, right? You can put it on multiple lines like this. And if you put, for example, this thing inside here, it will not be displayed on your website. Okay, so there should be just one title, right? Or I will just rename this to not displayed. Okay, so we will not see it, right? There is nothing of this sort. So that will just tell the browser, right? This thing will just tell the browser to, hey, don't execute anything that's inside of this. It's just a node from the developer, right? You want to just put some sort of comments into your code, just describing the sections of your website. So for example, you want to put a comment saying that this is the navigation bar, this is the footer, this is the hero section, this is the slider, or whatever, right? You want to describe your website. So I will just use this. You can put it on multiple lines, obviously. You can put it on one line, just saying headings, right? And you can also just put it in here, just saying, hey, this is a paragraphs and text. And then you can put it also in here, saying what we will learn next. And we will learn next the quotes. So you probably know what is quote, right? Usually when you, for example, write a blog or something, you want to quote somebody who said, right, some sort of famous quotes. So in order to do that, you just use the Q word as a quote. So this is a quote. And if I reload the page, you can see that this is a quote. It's kind of quotated, right? There's a notation around it. And it looks very cool. If you have some sort of larger quote, so for example, something like a paragraph quote, you can put in here a block quote. So block quote, right? Block quote tag like this. Close this thing. And inside of this, you can say just this is a block quote tag and some other text, right? You usually want to use this if you have some sort of paragraph of block, right? A large text of a quote. So right now you can see that it's just styled a bit differently, okay? But it's essentially, this is for the larger quotes, this is for just one sentence quote, okay? But it's as simple as that. Another element that I just want to show you is the end of line, okay? So sometimes you just want to put something on the next line, okay? So next line element. And this thing is usually used if you, for example, have a paragraph and you just want to say just first line something, right? Something will be on the first line, and then you want to put something at the second line. Okay, so you just want the line to break exactly at this point, right? There's often the case, right? It happens quite often, and in order to do that, you can just use the BR. So the break tag. You can notice that it's just opening, right? There is no closing tag with this one, and it kind of makes sense, right? You just have the opening tag saying to the browser, hey, break the line here. And why would you need a closing tag just to say this is where the breaking of the line stops? It doesn't make sense, right? So you have just the one opening tag saying this is a break line. And if I reload the page, as you can see, we go on this first line, and then the computer kind of presses the enter, and we start out on the second line, right, with this second line text. So this is another thing that you may want to use. Alright, so far we didn't do any interesting stuff. These are just basics, right? You use this on pretty much every page, but it's not that kind of thing that you would do wow over, right? The thing that's very interesting about the website is the links, right? So the links, we will start with them right now. And when you want to create a new link, you just type A as a link, and inside here you just have the text. So for example, you can just type go to Google or click here or whatever. Right, and if I save the page and reload the page, it's just shown as a normal text, and it really doesn't work, right? If I click on that, it doesn't work. Why it doesn't work? Well, we didn't specify to the computer what page to go to, right? This go to Google, computer doesn't know what is Google, right? He just like needs some sort of link, some sort of URL. Where to go to, and you can specify it right here. So you can just type into the opening heading, right? So opening tag, and inside here you can just type href equals something, okay? So this is a very important thing. You will see it all the time in a website, and inside here you just type into the opening tag, you type something called attribute, right? So this is a attribute of the link, basically describing where this link will take you, okay? And you can just type in here https google.com, and now, right, into this thing, right now, if I save the file, reload the page, you can see that it got blue somehow, so some sort of magic. But if I hover over it, you can see that my mouse actually changes. And when I click on that, it should actually take me to Google. And there we are at Google. So if I go back, it should take me back to my page. So yeah, this is the actual link. And you can link to your other pages not just to Google. So let me just show you how you can do that. So inside here, I will just type go to about page, and inside here I will just specify a file named about.html. Okay, save this thing and let's reload the page, see how it looks like. So there we have it, go to about page. When I click on that, you can see that the file was not found. Okay, so if I go back, we need to actually create the about.html. So if I go back to the file explorer and inside here create a new file, and I name this about.html, hit enter, we get a new file. I will just create the, let me just say this is a about page. Usually you definitely want to put the HTML tag, the head tag, and the body tag, right? So this is not a valid HTML5 page. I just want to demonstrate that this thing will be shown, okay? So if I reload the page and try this link again, there it is. This is a about page, okay? So this thing, this document is being shown, okay? So we can just link to other documents via the A tag. Another thing that you may want to describe is, for example, your target. So right now, you can just open it up, right? So if I go to Google, it opens up in the same tab, right? But what if I want to open it up in a new tab? So you can do that. You can, once again, what do you think is, when you want to open it up, it's a attribute of the link, right? This is a attribute of the link saying that when you click on this particular link, it will be opened in a new tab. So this attribute is called target, okay? And this one, once again, you need the kind of string signs, so quotation, and inside here you put where you want to open it up, and you just type this blank. If I'm not mistaken, it should be like this. So if I right now reload the page and click on this link, it opens up a new tab, right? In here is our page, and in new tab we have a Google. So this is what you can do, all kinds of crazy stuff with this. Alright, so far we have done kind of the basics, but what would be a website without a image, right? I don't remember seeing a website without any image. So let me just go here and type in here the images. So let me just create a new image. As I said in the beginning of the video, the image doesn't have a closing tag, right? Usually you can think of it this way. If there is some sort of text going inside of the tag, it should have a closing tag. But if there is no text, it usually doesn't have a closing tag. You can kind of simplify this a little bit. So the image obviously doesn't have any text going inside of this, right? It's just a image. And so in order to actually kind of load some sort of image, we need to specify some sort of attributes, just like we did with the link, okay? So inside here, we want to specify the path to our image, right, that we want to display. As I said earlier, I have a image.jpg inside the folder, okay? So keep that in mind because we will use it right now. So I will just type in here src as a source. So the source of the image will be the image.jpg like this. And if I save the thing and reload this, there it is. There is our image. So we've got a image shown just like that. For example, what happens if I type in here some name of the image that is not in the folder? So what happens now if I reload the page? There you can see this kind of broken image icon, okay? So you can, based on this, you can notice that there is something wrong with your image and it wasn't loaded. Usually you made a typo somewhere around here, okay? So make sure to make this correct without typos. Another thing that you want to specify with your image is, this is very important for the SEO part of your website, so search engine optimization, is a alt text, so alternative text. And this is basically you are describing the image in here for the browser. So because Google really cannot understand what is going on in an image, right? It's just too hard to do. So you need to help him out a little bit by just saying, this is a person. You can add something else, right? But basically you just tell the search engine what this image is all about in here, okay? And if I reload the page, you can see that this thing is not shown, right? So this alt text is not shown. But if I, for example, change this thing to something that is not there, right? So if the image is non-existent and I reload the page, you can see that the broken image icon stays there, but right now the text is being displayed, right? Because the browser couldn't find this image, so he says, well, I will at least show this text so that the user can kind of imagine what would be there, okay? So as I said earlier, you usually, if you see something like this, that's a mistake. You want the image to be shown, but this alt is basically for describing to the Google search what is going on in the image. So I will just change this back, save this thing, reload it, and we are good. Another thing that is very often used in a website is some sort of table, right? You often see a table in a website. It kind of makes sense, right? You want to display some sort of data or some sort of whatever, and you use a table for it. So I will just show you how to create one. So this is just telling the computer, hey, I want to create a table. But you also need to specify the heading of the table, right? So basically describe the columns and also the data, right? So the body of the table. So in order to do that, you have a th, so table header or table head. You can think of it like basically the head, right? The row of the head of the table, right? It's as simple as that. Inside the table head, you have some sort of row, right? So you just describe it as a table row, tr, okay? So you can notice the structure, right? We have table, inside of this we have head, and inside of the head we have the row, and inside of the row we have some sort of heading. So th as a table heading, and inside of this we can have some sort of text. So heading 1, let's just say it this way, and you can just copy paste this thing. So copy, paste, and we should have like 3 things right here. So if I save this thing, reload the page, you should be able to see this, right? Heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Cool. But the table also needs some sort of data, right? So underneath this t head, right? Underneath this tag, closing tag, you will create a body. So t body, basically saying that, hey, this is the body of the table. And inside of this, you once again have a rows, but this time you have td, so basically table data cell, okay? So this is one cell of the table. You can just say that value 1, right? You can call it this way. And if I just copy paste this thing once again, so that we have 3 values in here, you will able to see that we will create a new row. Okay, so if I save this thing, reload the page, you can see right here that we have value 1, value 2, value 3, and these are the headings, right? So it's very cool. Another thing that we can do is just copy paste this one row. Okay, so this is the one row that you can see in this table, and we want to just copy paste it right underneath. Okay, so that we have 2 rows inside here. If I reload the page now, as you can see, there are 2 data rows. And if I, for example, change this to something else, you can see that there will be a change, right? There it is, it's changed, and this just stays the same. So that's basically how you can create a table. It's as simple as that. Alright, another thing that I just want to show you is that sometimes you can see that these things get quite large. So for example, what you can do is if you go right here, hover over this, you can see these small arrows. And what they do is it actually collapses this thing down. So if I click on that, you can see that these things change it, right? You can see that the content is somehow hidden. There are these 3 dots so that I know that there is something in between these lines. And if I click back on this, right, it got opened up again. And I usually do this just to save some space on the file, so you can just close everything up and you just know that there is a table, but you don't necessarily have to watch the whole content. You can just really quickly just go through the file and find out your sections in the file. So this is very useful. I do that all the time. Yeah, so let me just go ahead and talk about another element, which is the lists. So lists are a list that you probably know about, right? You have 2 types. You have a unordered list. You use the UL as a unordered list, and inside every list you have a list item. Okay, so you can just say this is a item, and you can have multiple of these, right? You can have 1 item, second, third, fourth, and you can have like really how many items you want. So right now you can see that this is a list displayed as a list, and that there are a couple of items in there. So this is very cool. You usually want to use it if you want to, for example, in a blog post, you usually see those key takeaways at the top of the blog post, right? Saying just it's a unordered list about the key takeaways from the post. Another type of list that we have is a ordered list, so OL. And once again, inside of this, we will have some sort of list items. So if I just put it in here, but this time they will be ordered. So this one is number 1, and let's say that this one will be 3, and this one will be 4th, and this one will be 2nd. But the text really doesn't change the way it looks in here, right? It's just so that you know which item I am talking about. And also you can see that there are these 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th added in front of this, right? I didn't write it in here. It got automatically added because I said this is a ordered list. So if you have some sort of I don't know, ordered list, like I don't know, like some results of some sort of tournament or whatever, you want to use ordered list. Another thing that I just want to say is sometimes you can see these things on web, and these are actually some sort of navigation links, and you can definitely do that. You can just create a link, put this text inside of this link, and add the href to this, and just maybe go to about HTML. And yeah, this is a valid thing you can do. Okay, this is a thing that you can see on a lot of websites, just a list item where you have links. Okay, and the link is working just fine. Okay, so yeah, so this is a thing that you can see very often. So far we have talked about those basic building blocks. Right now I will try to go to a bit more advanced stuff. So things that you really will not see in your HTML document. So let me just start out by telling you about a div. A div is a block element, right? You can divide elements into a block. So let me just create a new comment saying that this is a block elements, and you can also divide them into a inline element. So inline. And what are the differences between these? So for example, this block element will be displayed as a one block on your website, okay? And the inline elements will be displayed as a kind of inline. Well, yeah, that's pretty good explanation, but it will be displayed as a part of a line, okay? So for example, if you have a paragraph and inside of this you will have like something like this is a text, and then you have a link inside of the paragraph, saying this is a inline element, and then you have once again some sort of text, right? Let's save this thing, let's reload the page, see how it looks like. You can see that it's just inline, right? It doesn't create a new block that would go underneath this, right? You can notice that, for example, paragraph is a block element, because when I create a new paragraph, there's automatically kind of added the end of the line, right? So something, if I reload the page, you can see that there's automatically kind of break, right? It breaks these two apart. You can think of it as a inline element being tied together and block element as a independent block of the website. And why are block elements important? Well, usually you just want to divide your blog or your website into different blocks. You have, for example, a blog saying that this is a header. This is one block on your website. You have another block element saying that this is a article. Then you have another block element saying that this is a paragraph in the article. So you can have different block elements inside one another, okay? And you basically usually divide the whole website into a blocks. And the way you do this is just typing, for example, a div. Div is a block element. You can just put some sort of text in it or whatever, but the div basically have no semantic sense. So it basically, you really don't tell anything to the browser by creating a div element. Okay, so it's just a block element that you can use in order to style your website, so you can change by the div the way the website looks, but you are not telling anything to the browser, okay? So this is a div. You usually use that just to style things up, okay? Another block element is, for example, a article, and this is a HTML5 element. So HTML5 elements are very cool these days. They are describing the web in sort of a new way. The article basically are telling the browser that this is some sort of block of information in which the information is kind of tied together. So you can think of it as a, for example, the suggested video, right? You have image and then you have the title, right? And these two informations are tied together. So you should put this into the article. So if I put in here the image with the source of the image.jpg, so this image, right, that we can show right here, that we can see right here, and then I put, for example, some sort of H2, some sort of heading saying this is John, it makes sense to keep these two things in one article because they are kind of tied together, right? They are logically, they are connected, right? You know that you are describing by this heading, you are describing who is on this image, right? So you want to use the article whenever you have some sort of, you want to group some sort of elements that are tied up to each other, right? That have some sort of relationship between each other. Usually you can think of it as a blog post, okay? Blog post on your website. Then you have a section on your website. So if you type in here section, so with this text, section, and close this thing, inside of this you can put a lot of other elements. And this section basically groups together like some sort of articles, right? One group of articles, you can think of it this way. So if you think, once again, the blog example, you can have some sort of category, right, in your blog. So this is a section. The category is a section, and inside of the category, right, you have multiple articles, right? And this is basically how you can tell this to the browser. You are saying that, hey, this is a section that can have maybe some sort of heading, so maybe something like a very important heading, and you can say that this is a section about people or whatever. And then you can have a lot of articles, and these articles are on its own describing the person, okay? So if I reload the page, you can see just a lot of code. It really doesn't make any sense because the section is really not shown, right? It's just some sort of hidden from the eyes, but it's there for the computer, okay? Very cool. So these are two of the most important in my opinion. Then we have another ones. One of them is the header. Basically is a element that represents, you can see it described right here. I would try to put this in more kind of simpler way. You can think of it as a header. You can think as the header in your website, right? The navigation bar on your website. Usually you can think of it as a header. I recommend using just one header on per page, okay? So you can once again just close this thing. Then you can have some sort of logo, so image. Then you can have some sort of navigation inside of this, okay? So inside of this you can maybe type some sort of H1 saying that this is the title of the page, right? Title of the page. And then underneath you can have some sort of navigation bar. So nav is another HTML5 element that basically tells the computer that this is a navigation. And this should be used for the main navigation on your website. You should use this only once on your website. Same thing as with the header, okay? And you should just say, usually when you have any kind of sort of landing page or whatever, right, at the top of the page, you usually have the main navigation, right? The navigation bar with the links. Usually inside of the nav, you have some sort of unordered list. And in the unordered list, you have some sort of list items. And as in the list item, you have some sort of link, okay? And inside here, you have maybe like contact us, about us page and other pages, right? So this is how you would create a header in a website, right? This is the actual example that pretty much every page uses in order to create the header, right? You have some sort of heading and then you have some sort of navigation, but that's about it, okay? And this is how you can create it. It's as simple as that. Okay, then you have usually some sort of sections, and at the end of the page, you can have some sort of footer. So footer is that thing that is usually at the complete bottom of the page, okay? Complete bottom of the page, it usually has some sort of different color, some different layout, right? And in there, you usually have some sort of useful links, terms of services, stuff like that. But the footer is basically an HTML5 element, and inside of the footer, you just want to put the footer of the page, yeah? So it's really intuitive. It's really intuitive to use. Also, there are another two of these elements, okay? One of them is a main element. So with the main element, you just want to describe that this is the main part of your website, okay? So if you have some sort of blog and you have like some sort of, let's say just two sections in there with some sort of categories. So I will just copy paste this, right? So you have two sections. I will collapse it down. With some sort of different types of blog posts. But this whole thing is the main content, right, of your website. You are just telling the browser that this is really the most important thing about my website, the most important content on my website. So you want to put these sections inside of the main tag, okay? And also, you can just say that there is some sort of other content, usually use the aside tag, and this is the other HTML5 tag that usually tells you that this is not the main content, right? So you have the main content. For example, with YouTube, you have the video, the comment section, and this is the main content, right? This is the main content. And in the aside, you have what is in the sidebar. So the suggested videos are in the aside tag, okay? So inside here you can once again have some sort of sections, some sort of articles, and other stuff. Okay, so I will just put in here an article, and usually once again inside the article you can have some sort of heading, some sort of image, right, and some sort of paragraph, for example, so P instead of O, like this. But yeah, but this is the main point, right? The aside is usually the sidebar, and the main is the main part of your website. And usually at the top you have the header, and at the bottom you have the footer. Okay, so this is a actual layout that is often used with a lot of websites these days, right? So I will just comment it out, write it in here, just so you know. So main layout of the page, right? This is used to describe pretty much every page that there is on the internet. Of course there are exceptions, but usually a page website have some sort of structure like this. Okay, and last but not least, we forgot about one thing, which is the forms. So often on a page you have some sort of form, right? If you want to contact somebody, you have the contact form right there. If you want to write a comment section in the comment section, right, you have some sort of input forms in there, right, so that you can write it down. So in here we will actually create the form. So in order to create one, you usually just open, and you have the open tag and closing tag of form, right? Makes sense. We are telling the browser this is a form, and inside of the form we usually have some sort of input. And if I save this thing and reload it, you should be able to see at the bottom that we've got some sort of input in here, right? And you can write into it. You can do pretty cool stuff. No, well, not as cool, you can just basically write. But anyways, you have this input and you really don't have to do anything for it, right? It's already kind of predefined. You are just saying to the computer, hey, please create a input in here, and the browser will take care of everything, of actually creating some sort of like some sort of border around this thing, and the thing that where the user can actually write. Okay, so this is how we can describe a input. Now the user usually wants to know what he is writing, so you need to also add some sort of label usually, right? And the label can just describe what the input is all about. So for example, your name, right? And if I reload the page, you can see that there it is, your name, and you can just write it down. Okay, cool. And another thing in here that you can specify is the type of the input. So for example, sometimes you want the type to be text, like this. So then the user can write whatever he wants. So if I reload the page, I can write the letters, I can write numbers, I can write special characters, I can write everything, right? But if I, for example, type in here type number, save this thing, and reload the page, you can see that I cannot write text. I'm trying to, but I cannot. And I can write only numbers. I cannot write special characters, okay? So this is very simple thing that can just prevent the user from entering something stupid, for example, for a phone number, right? If you just say that the type is a number, user has to put in number, he cannot put in text. This is very important, for example, on a mobile phone, right? If you make a responsive website, so basically a website that will be shown on your website, on your phone, on your smartphone, this type is very important, because if you want to enter a number, this type number will show a different keyboard for the user than the type text, okay? So you will have just the keyboard where you have just the numbers, right? And this is very good for the user experience. So you definitely want to specify whenever you can what type of input you have. Also, another thing that you may want to use is just use a placeholder. So the placeholder attribute will basically describe what is shown by default if you want. So for example, enter your name. This is usually that sort of hint, right, for the user to know what to write in here, right? As you can see, there is the enter your name written, and when I click, I can start writing something, number. Yeah, so it kind of doesn't make sense, but you get the point, right? The placeholder will define what will be kind of shown, some sort of hint for the user. Also, you can define a default value by just typing value and then some sort of value. So for example, I can say 1000, okay? So 1000 will be the default value. When I reload the page, you can see that there is 1000 written in there. And another thing that I just want to show is that when you use placeholder and value at the same time, the placeholder will not be shown. You will see only the value, right, as you do right now. Alright, another thing that I just want to show you is that I will just put a little bit of space so that you can distinguish from these things. I want to show you how you can actually create a sort of input of the type of radio button. So oftentimes when you have a website, you want to pick from a couple of options, right? So if you have a input of type radio, you will have this sort of button that you can click on, okay? And you can have multiple of these, you can have more of these. Oh, my bad. So if I just copy paste these a couple of times, you have 3 buttons. You should be able to see 3 buttons in there. Okay, there they are, right? And you can select them, okay? So very cool. And inside of this, you can pick the value. So you can define the value of this, and this is something that will be used in your PHP script. So this form, you can define the action that will take place, and inside here you should have something like a action.php or some other script that will handle the information that when the user sends this form, okay? And this value will be actually sent to this file so that it can handle it. And inside here you can just define the value. So for example, male, then you can just put a different value for this radio button and from this. So for example, female and other, I guess. And if you reload the page, you can see that this will not be shown. This is only for this kind of form to be sent with the form, okay? So when you click on that, it will be sent as, hey, you clicked on the radio with the value of female, just for the script to know what you clicked on actually. And you can once again add some sort of label underneath this. So if you add just label saying male, and then you put a ending line at this, so BR, break line, right? You can just put multiple of these, so male, female, and other, and save this thing and reload it. You should be able to see some sort of simple, very simple form where you can just click on, right? You can click on and it will work. Right now we can also notice that when I click on every one of these, they will be selected, but I want the feature of when I pick one, and then I pick another one, I want the previous one to be deselected, right? So in order to do that, we can just give these inputs the same name. So for example, name, gender, right? And just take this attribute and copy paste it inside every single one of these, right? So this basically says, hey, these inputs are in this one group named gender. And if I reload the page and start to click on these things, you can see that when I click on new one, the older one gets unselected, right? So this is a cool thing that you can use. And last but not least, we have a button. So inside here, I have just a input, okay, of the type submit. And we can just say that this will have some sort of value, and this will be, for example, saying just send me, okay? So let's just close this thing and let's see how it looks like, right? There is a button that says send me, okay? So the value is actually shown inside the button, and when you click on that, it actually sent the whole formula, right? This whole content of this to this action.php file. And you can see that this file was not found because it doesn't exist. But you can see that it actually works. It sent this thing out, right? So that's one thing you can do. And another element that you can use is the button. So button, and you can add the type submit for this one too. So type submit, and you are just saying by this type submit that the button will send this whole form, right? Okay, if the type submit wasn't here, it wouldn't do anything, okay? And inside here you can just say send me button. Okay, so you have, in this case, you have the actual content written inside here. You don't have the value tag. And if I reload the page, there it is, send me button. When I click on that, it gets sent once again. You have some sort of, you can use different types. So for example, a reset type. So if I reload the page now, type something in here and select something in here, click on the reset button, you can see that the form got reset, right? Right, it's sort of a magic. If I click on the button, it got reset. Okay, so I can just change this one to reset. And yeah, so this is just a cool thing that you can do. So that is actually about it for the HTML. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Feel free to watch the video again if you don't understand something, if you missed something out. Feel free to do so. Feel free to write your questions down below. I will try to answer them if I can. And I will also give you a bit of a preview for what will come in the next lecture that will be on CSS. And I will show you a little bit of a preview of what we will do. So what you can do in HTML is type a style tag. You usually put this before the body tag. Okay, so in front of the body tag, you can put a style tag. And what you can do in here is style the whole document. So you can just target some sort of a element, right? So this body element, then you have these curly brackets, and inside of this, you can define all kinds of crazy stuff. So you can just say that color will be green. Let's just save this thing and reload the page. There it is. The color of the text is green. Okay, you can say that the background color, so background color will be black. So let's just go with black. Let's just save this thing, reload it, and there you go. You've changed the color of the page to black one. You can target different sort of elements. So you can, for example, say that the H1 heading will have the color of white one, so white, like this. And if I save this thing, reload the page, there it is. These H1 headings are white, right? And you can change so much more things, right? Not only colors. You can change the way it looks. You can, for example, say that every image will have the width of, let's just go with 50 pixels. So it will be very small. Let's just say this, and let's reload the page. There it is. These images got really smaller, right? A lot of stuff. You can really change a lot of stuff. This is actually the styling of the whole website so that it looks good. This is the actual magic that you probably want to learn. So feel free to hit the subscribe button just to stay notified when I release this new video talking about this thing. And yeah, if you like this video, feel free to hit the like button. For more of these, subscribe, and I will see you next time.